Hi everyone, in this week's video we'll be doing a quick recap of SQL or SQL and how we can use SQL in an interface. Additionally, we'll understand a few basics and we'll also look at how we can use ChatGPT to generate SQL queries, how we can use it for practicing, stuff like that. So I'm using an application called DB Browser for SQLite. Right? You can simply install this from the official website if required. You can just search for DB Browser for SQLite and you should be able to install it. If you want to look at this website, the website is this, right? SQLitebrowser.org. And you can download for Windows from here and you can download for Mac from here as well. In DB Browser, when you want to work by uploading your CSV files, because I'm working on my local system, I don't want to connect to an online source or a SQL server. I will first click on create new database. It will ask me to save the database somewhere. Just going to call it temp for now. Put it in my downloads folder. Click save. We can cancel this view. Here you can write a query to create a table, but I'll be uploading my own CSV file. Once I have created the database, I can go to database structure and I can see that my database is created, right? I can now see that there are 0 tables in this current database. I will go to file, I will go to import and table from CSV file, and I will upload my table, which is table employee data. Fairly simple data set. That's a CSV file, and you can see all the columns here. There are 15 rows, not a quite huge data set. When you're importing, you can change the table name from here so that the same name appears inside of DB Browser. Additionally, you need to ensure that this checkbox is checked. Otherwise, it will not use or identify the column headings. If your column names are in the first line, you can click on this checkbox. It's like Power Query, where you promote your headers, that sort of stuff. Everything else can remain same. You can simply press OK, and now I can click on this expand option and you can see that I have a table which has all these columns, right? Perfect. I can come to the section called execute SQL and I can now start writing queries. This first window, I can use my mouse to pinch in, pinch out to zoom. This is where you will write your queries. This is where you will see the output, and here you have a third panel which allows you to see whether the query was executed successfully, how much time did it take for the query to execute. Very basic statement is, if you want to see all the columns from your table, right, you can write select, which allows you to select specific columns. When I put the asterisk, it essentially means that I want all the columns from my table, and then I have to specify from which table do I need to retrieve all the columns. So we say from, I can press tab to complete the clause from IntelliSense. These are clauses, select, from, these are called clauses in SQL. And I can then put my table name. I can click on this button right here and it will run the query for me. I can see my output being generated right here, right? And I can see the entire data set. So this basic statement allows you to retrieve all columns from the table. I can write all my queries in this same tab, or I can click on this button right here that allows me to create a new tab to write the query. If I'm writing queries in the same tab, I would generally put a semicolon at the end to distinguish my first query from any other query that I write below this. You can write it on the next line or you can skip a line, that's absolutely okay. Do remember, writing this in lowercase also works, so it's not case sensitive. Right? I would get the same output, right? It would not impact. But ideally, we write the clauses in uppercase just as a general rule of thumb. If I want to retrieve specific columns from the table, for example, I have employee ID, date of joining, first name, last name, salary, division, rating. I can write specific column names. So for example, employee ID, it pops up in the IntelliSense. I can press tab to complete, comma, let's say salary, comma, division, from table employee data, put a semicolon there. I can click on the button right here, or I can press the shortcut Control R to run. So I press Control R and it will run and retrieve and give me the output only for these specific columns that I have chosen here. Right? So select a from, there are 2 basic queries. Then next we have the where clause. So I'll say select employee ID salary from table employee data where division is equal to HFD, right? I can also get my division column here so that we can validate if the output is correct. And you can see now that I have applied a literal filter and I can see only employees from the HFD division, right? So that's where is like a literal filter that you apply on the raw table, right? So the where clause allows you to apply a filter. Then we have something called a group by. So for example, if I say select employee ID salary division from, in fact, just a second before I go to group by, so we have select from where. Let me show you a different clause before I jump to group by. So I can use order by. So in the same clause, okay, before I go ahead, I can use something called as order by, which allows me to sort my data, right? I can specify the column. For example, if I want to sort by employee ID in a descending order, I can write DESC for descending, I can run it, and you will see that my employee IDs are sorted in a descending order right here. Right? If I change that to ascending by writing ASC and I press Ctrl R, you'll see that my employee IDs are sorted in an ascending order. Right? Now, if I want to take the first 3 employee IDs, I don't want all of them, so I can say limit 3 and I press Ctrl R, so it gives me the top 3 employee IDs. Top in the sense from the top of the table, not by the salary amount, not by the count, the sequence of employee ID, just literally from the top of the table, it gives me the top 3 employee IDs. Yeah, and that does not work. Yeah, so just writing a positive number allows you to get the top 3 values. If you want to do a simple count, let's say I want to count how many employees I have, so I can say select count, and if I put like count asterisk from table employee data, this allows me to get the total count of the table, right? 15, which in this case is going to be the same for employee ID column as well. This will give you the count of the employee ID column right here. If I want to count how many divisions I have, right, and I press Ctrl R, this is the count of records in my table, which is how many rows do I have? I have 15 rows, as you can see in the browse data panel right here. But if I want to count, like, let's say distinct divisions, I don't want to see all my divisions, I want to see how many distinct divisions do I have. For example, I have HFD, RAD, so on and so forth. I want to see their count exactly one time. So I'll write distinct here. So distinct is on the clause, and I can press Ctrl R and tells me that there are 5 distinct divisions. Right? So there are 15 rows for each employee, but those employees belong to 5 divisions overall, 5 distinct divisions overall. You can write the query in a single line, or you can break it into different lines. That does not cause any problem. Right now you can see the column name output is not very refined. So you can use a clause called as, and I can give it a name, right? For example, say unique divisions, right? So that becomes the output header right here. Right? So as allows you to assign a name to the calculation. You can assign a name to the calculation by writing as. So you've done select, from, where, order by, limit. There are 2 additional that I would like to cover for you, which is group by and having. So let's look at the problem statement. I have my raw data right here. I want to count that within each division, right? So within each division, how many employees are there? I want the count of employees in each division, right? So I'll have to aggregate the data by my division column. So we'll do exactly that. We do this using the group by clause. So whatever you want to group by, that column has to be selected. So I'll say select division and count employee ID as count employees. This is just a name that I'm assigning to the calculation. It could be anything. I have selected column 1 and this will be my column 2 output. From table employee data, group by division, that is the column I want to group by, and I run this and I'll have an output which looks like this, right? So each division will now be present exactly one time. Let me just expand this and let me minimize this. Okay, so you can see AD, CDFD, AD, HFD, RAD. And if I want to go ahead and I want to sort this data, I can say order by count of employee. Now I don't have to write this entire formula or this entire part. I can just write the alias that I have assigned. Right? If I don't specify anything in this order sorting, like ascending or descending, by default it sorts by, you can see, ascending order. If I want descending, I can write DESC for descending order. Right? Additionally, let me just sort this by ascending itself. After group by, if you want to retrieve or apply some filter on this table that you see right here, you cannot use a where clause here. So a where clause generally appears before the group by, and that is used for filtering on the raw table, right? So that's a row level filter that you apply on the raw table. For example, if I would, a where clause would look like this. I am saying I want to see all the rows for HFD division. That is what you would see here. But once you group the data, this is not present, this table does not exist in your query, in your database. So if you want to apply a filter on this, we have to use a clause called having. So you can say having count of employees, say greater than equal to 3, right? So it shows me only 3 divisions which have the count of employees as greater than equal to 3, like this, right? So these are all the basic queries in SQL. Now if I want to sort this by descending and I want to get only the first one, so I'll say limit, which limit will allow me to get the first row from the table if I write 1. So it tells me HFD has 7 employees, right? Like this. So very natural in how you would write the query, right? Obviously, when you're solving more complex problems, the queries get very long, more complex. But as a beginner, having an understanding of these basic queries is sufficient. In fact, I have a quick visual that I would like to show you. So in SQL, we write the queries in this order, which is select, from, where, group by. After group by, you will have having, order by, and limit. But that is not how the query is executed, right? So the query is executed in this format. So at the back end. So from is executed first, which is first it will identify what table you're looking at. Then it applies the where clause. So it will reduce the number of rows by the filter that you have applied. Then you do a group by. Then you select the columns. Then you do the order by. Then you do the limit. That is the order of execution, right? What the SQL engine does internally. So that's a basic introduction of SQL. If you've gotten a sense of this, and if you want to practice, what you can do is you can either copy the column names, take a quick screenshot, right, of your table. For example, I can take a screenshot right here, and if it's quite a long table, you can copy the column headings. I can come to ChatGPT and I can say, I want to practice SQL. Help me by framing 5 problem statements. Right? Only give me the problem statement, not the solution. Let's start with basic. So I've given it my table. I could have also given it my column headings, and that tells me that these are your 5 problem statements. So we've tried this, which is retrieve all employees from the employee details table, which is select asterisk from, list employees from the HFD division, which is applying a where level filter, find employees with salary greater than 1 lakh. This is where you will have to apply a where clause. So you will have to come back, say select, let's say employee ID, and let's say division from table employee data where salary is greater than 1 lakh. Right? You'll have to apply a filter like this. List employees who have a null last name, right? So because if you look at our data, it says that some employees have a missing last name. The word null is mentioned there. So if I want to retrieve these values where the last name is null, so I can say select employee ID division from table employee data where last name is equal to null. Now do remember that if a column heading has a space in between, you have to put that in square brackets. So you can see here, first name column has a space in between, last name column has a space in between, so you have to put that in square brackets, otherwise it doesn't work, it doesn't understand what the column is. So right click, there are 3 employees, and we can get their first names also. So I can get their first name, I can get their, in fact I don't need the division, I can get their last names, and you'll see that these 3 employees have null for the last name. And then there is a date level filter that you can apply, so on and so forth. If you want to go to the next level of problems, you can always ask for it. If you have a question in mind, then you can ask it. So if I look at my data, okay, and I want to identify, let's say, the employee who's receiving the highest salary, right? So I can come back and say, I want to identify employee who is receiving the 3rd highest salary, for example. Then it will give you the query, and it will also explain the query to you, and you can ask more questions to identify how does the solution look like. So it says you can use limit, offset, dense rank, or subqueries. Do remember, questions like these are slightly advanced, but you can try to work with them. Right? If you ask for a solution, can you walk me through the solution? It'll tell you that it can walk you through the solution as well. Right? Just give me a second. So it says, what is your problem? So it says that what if 2 employees have the same salary, which can be the case. So how do you decide? So it'll assign ranks to the salary. Now there are different approaches that you can take. You can use a subquery or a window function. It'll then walk you through the method, right? So on and so forth, right? So it tells you what it is doing. It is telling you what is the easier approach, what is the difficult approach. I'll not walk you through everything, but once you understand these basic 6 queries, which I've shown you, which is nothing but select from where, group by having, order by, so these 6, and then there's limit also, right? And you should be able to get started. In fact, limit is not very important in this case, but these 6 are the essential ones that you will be using everywhere eventually. Obviously, when you try to solve more problems, once you've done with the basics, then you go to the advanced stuff, right? And GPT can help you practice, learn step by step. There are some channels also that you can rely on. For example, if I want to get a good sense of all the clauses, I like to go through W3 School's SQL. You can just Google this, open the first link, and it walks you through all the important clauses in SQL, right? Obviously, you could ask questions to ChatGPT also. It can explain this to you as well. But just coming here, reading, because they also have an interface where you can practice. So they have a dummy table here, and you can try the query yourself. You can try to write different stuff. So for example, if I come here and if I run SQL, it shows me the results, right? So number of records, select country from customers. So it shows me country from customers. If I want to write something else, let's say categories, and if I run it, not sure that is not working. Oh, that's the table name. Okay, sorry. I'll have to look at what columns are there in the table. 1 second. Yeah. So category has, select asterisk from categories. Or categories is the table name, right? So if you want a specific column from categories, like category name, then you can write name and run it, and then it'll give you only category name from the categories table. So these are tables that are mentioned on the right here. Right? So this, you can come and practice here as well directly. Do remember, different interfaces have some limitations. So there is basic syntax changes. So because I'm using DB browser, so for example in DB browser, the limit clause is used to get from the top, and in some others we have something called a top in some other, like MySQL server and some other interfaces. Not very important. As you go along, as you practice, you get familiarized with all of this. Right? That's a quick introduction to SQL. Hope you got a good sense. I hope I was able to explain the basic stuff, right? And do remember, this is quite basic, like this is level 0 to level 1. Once you practice more, get a better sense, right, of data types, database schema, database structure, then you start to get into the more advanced stuff, right? Thank you, and hope you enjoy the video.